We're continuing on in the series of self-publishing with Dale, talking about all aspects of my newest book series. And we're 5 publications deep into this 12-book series. And we're actually going to kind of get ahead of things because, believe it or not, there's a lot of publications that haven't been released. It's going to be going deep into 2025, so you're going to be getting a little bit of intel in the coming weeks. But today, actually, we're going to be talking about my most recent publication in How to Write a Nonfiction Book in 24 Hours. And there's so much we can dig into that, but today's topic is going to kind of be talking a little bit more about writing a nonfiction book in 24 hours. But can we write and publish a nonfiction book in 24 hours? I mean, man, that's quite a stretch. AI aside, taking artificial intelligence aside, we're just going to kind of put this off because there are many complexities we have to address before getting a solid practical answer to this one here. So make sure that you stay tuned to today's podcast. Over 3 years ago, I had the privilege of working with an incredible author who turned me onto a relatively new book marketing service called Book Award Pro. Now, admittedly, I had my guard up and was immediately skeptical of what they could offer that I couldn't already pretty much do myself. Reluctantly, I tested out Book Award Pro and was actually pleasantly surprised by what they offered. Fast forward to now, and Book Award Pro has become the go-to book marketing tool for getting targeted book awards and reviews. Whether you're a cash-strapped author or an established professional, Book Award Pro has 3 tiers you can subscribe to, including the free plan to the top-tier Pro plan. Get targeted book awards recommendations, story marketing features. You can humble brag about your book and gather reviews for your upcoming book launch. For more details about one of my preferred book marketing tools, check out Book Award Pro when you visit my affiliate link at dalelinks.com/Book Award Pro. Special shout out and thanks to Book Award Pro for being a longtime sponsor of this podcast. Without them, this podcast would be a struggle to produce on a weekly basis. Again, that's dalelinks.com/Book Award Pro. Alrighty, so let's get into the topic here. Can you write and publish a nonfiction book in 24 hours? Now, I wish there was a simple answer of me saying yes or no, but there's so much more involved. Now, in my award-nominated book, How to Write a Nonfiction Book in 24 Hours, I share a really granular approach to how I'm able to craft nonfiction books at a pretty good clip. Now, just again, spoiler alert, we're taking artificial intelligence, we're removing it from the conversation here. But even if you were to use artificial intelligence, and I'm sure I'll probably say this again, you're still going to need the same processes that you would otherwise need if you were doing any of the things that I'm going to tell you to do, whether it's voice dictation, transcription, handwriting, touch typing, that type of stuff. Now, let's break down the critical steps for writing a nonfiction book in 24 hours. These are the things that have served me really well, and I've been in the business for a decade, and I've written dozens of nonfiction books. So the very first thing, right out the rip, do the research ahead. It's going to save you so much hassle and heartache and horse manure. The more information you can put together, the better. Now, what I typically do whenever I'm doing my research is I will collect all relevant sources and links and all that in one big folder or on a document of some sort. So that way it's easy for me to access when I get ready to write my book. You want to have all these resources available so that way it's not stopping your workflow. You're not having to, like, say, for instance, you're deep into chapter 2 and then you come up to a sticking point and you go, oh, I can't remember that one. Well, let me go and Google this up. Or, oh, let me go ahead and ask artificial intelligence, things like that. Well, that's going to chip away at your time. You're going to want to make sure you have that research done ahead of time. Have everything ready. In fact, have too much information versus not enough information. Having that information available to you when you're writing is going to make all the difference in the world. So that way you're not having to slow down for any particular specific point that you're trying to make or any type of source that you want to reference within your publication. Now, the next big step, a lot of people grit their teeth and they stomp their feet and they say, I don't want to do this, but it makes a huge difference when you outline the book. I know some of you pantsers out there, or discovery writers, if you want to go for a more politically correct term. I don't know if there's anybody that's going to cancel me for calling you a pantser. But for discovery writers out there, it's fantastic you can do that. And there are probably a chosen few that could probably be able to crank out a book really, really fast in that methodology. But there are way less instances of that being actually a thing. And here's the thing is, if you are a pantser and you're a discovery writer and that's something you love to do, I just recommend that you just take a little bit of time and just get a rough outline put together. That outline doesn't need to be sexy. It's just a simple roadmap. And every now and then, you're going to run into some detours and you're going to run into some roadblocks and you're going to run into some issues like the road doesn't exist anymore or something like that. So you could still be flexible about what you're doing. So don't think that you are married to an outline as soon as you write it down. In fact, there's been many instances where I've done a full outline. I get everything ready to rock and roll. It took me maybe a week or two that I put this thing together, had all the research ready to go. And then when I actually go to write it, I discover I covered this point in this chapter. Or, this point seems redundant. Having the outline really helps keep me on track because you have 24 hours. And if you're really going to want to do this, you really in your heart want to finish this thing up, get an outline ready to rock and roll. Now, how I do it is super simple. It's pretty much what I learned in friggin' high school, which is you just break out your content into big points, and then you break them down into sub points and then sub points. And one of the things I like to do, and especially when it comes to a nonfiction book, is I ask questions, ask relevant questions pertaining to that particular topic. So that way, when I sit down and I get ready to write it, I'm writing like I'm having a conversation with you here. Like it's just a normal conversation and I'm just answering questions. Now, obviously, you're going to want to be very detailed about that answer. But for the most part, if you get all the outline put together with the questions put in place, it should just be a simple thing of just going right through it. So take your time, put that outline together. It is so important. Prepare, prepare, prepare. Now, could you just go into your 24 hours with no outline whatsoever? Sure. But be prepared. You may not finish the work, or you might finish the work and it's going to require a ton of editing, especially in the developmental and structural editing portion of things. Now, next step obviously is going to be choosing the content creation method. There are so many ways we can do this, but I'm going to start that at the very low tier here. This is not to say that people who do this are like low lives or anything else like that. Please don't. It just means it's slow. It's going to take a little longer if you're handwriting your book. Yes, there are authors out there that still have the old-fashioned pen and paper, and they write it down that way. And that's so commendable. But the problem is, the reason why it's slow, it's not necessarily slow from the aspect, maybe you can write really fast. But the problem is, as soon as you're done handwriting that stuff, then you're going to have to transpose all of that into digital form. So then you can go and you can edit and all that type of stuff. So handwriting, pretty good. If you're a fast handwriter, maybe it's for you. You'd still be able to write the book within 24 hours, but there's going to be some friction after you're done with that. Now, when you're hitting the next tier, it's going to be slow to fast. We're talking about touch typing. Touch typing is kind of like the universally accepted way of authors writing their books. So many people do it this way, whether they're doing the old, ASDF on the, what's the word I'm looking for? Man, someone's going to probably send me an email and be like, you know what it's called, Dale, actually? But you're placing your fingers on the home keys, essentially, and you're going through and doing the touch typing. And some people like to do the old chicken pecking method, which is just 4 fingers and they just go crazy. I used to have a good friend of mine and a roommate that the guy was just as fast as me. Like he was like doing 50 to 60 words per minute from how fast he could move with his 4 fingers. It was incredible. But how fast you do touch typing is going to really play a factor in, can you finish it within 24 hours? And this is one of the reasons why I recommend that you test your ability to touch type. There are a number of online tests for doing touch typing to figure out how fast you can do it. Just Google search it up. I don't have any real reliable resources on that one. But just go ahead, try it out, test it out before you do, because then you can kind of figure out, okay, if I'm trying to write a 40 to 50,000 word manuscript, is it realistic for me to touch type and complete it within the 24 hours? Because this is where you're going to need to audit and figure out, will this be possible? Because for some people, it won't with this particular methodology. But if you find that that is not fast enough, you can always go to the next step up, which is going to be about roughly the same speed, maybe slower, maybe faster, through voice dictation. Now, voice dictation has come a long way, especially over the last few years. We're used to hearing about, say, Dragon Naturally Speaking, which, by the way, they come at an exorbitant amount of money to actually get. If you happen to be getting Dragon Naturally Speaking, kudos to you, but I just don't want to spend money on that type of software. Sure, you can train your dragon, and it's a little bit better than the other methodologies, but you can simply do what I did. Early on in my career, when I was doing some ghostwriting for my wife, we had put together just a system where I would have my old-fashioned Android. I would open up Google Docs, I would turn on the mic, and I would speak right into it. Now, here is the little bit of a hang-up for voice dictation that a lot of people aren't very aware of is you're going to have to take your time and you have to spell everything out. Not literally spell everything out, but you will have to sound everything out. So for instance, a simple sentence like Dragon Naturally Speaking is hot garbage in my opinion, period. But, comma, if that's something that you like and you want to spend the money, go for it. Period. I probably could have done more punctuation. Please don't edit me as I'm telling you this type of stuff. But you see, it's a little harder, and the problem is it starts to access somewhere else in your brain, a different skill and a different subset of understanding of how you're writing. And where you might be really good at handwriting and you might be great at touch typing, but you go over to voice dictation, I'm going to tell you this, you will slow down a lot. And this is something that requires a lot of practice. So I used Google Docs, again, on my phone years ago, and I cranked out a pretty good pace. I would say it was definitely somewhere in the range of 1,000 to 2,000 words per hour. Could it be better? Absolutely. One thing, though, I do want to share with you is there's a company, this is not sponsored, by the way. They'd reached out to me a few weeks ago, and I really like what they got going on. It's called ProsWrite. Prose is in the type of stuff that you write. So ProsWrite is a company that does voice dictation, but it's like on steroids. You don't need to do the verbal punctuation. You don't need to tell it next line. You can literally just go in, open up your mic, and fire away. So it's almost like transcribing. More about that here in just a second here. And you can choose the type of artificial intelligence that will edit your text as you go through. There's something as just simple as, I think it's called the proofreader, and it'll just do minimal editing, and it will edit it as you go along. It's really, really neat. I highly recommend you go and check out ProsWrite. I think it's proswrite.com. I got the link inside my show notes as per usual. Definitely take a look at them. It's gonna change the game when it comes to voice dictation, and has me really thinking more and more potentially about ditching touch typing, because I'm a talker, folks. But then again, I get a different thinking process and how I write when I'm touch typing versus talking. So there is that. Now, of course, I already kind of revealed the next one's going to be the fastest way of doing things, which is transcribing. You talk, record it, take the recording, then have it transcribed by a professional. There are professional services out there like rev.com. You can go over into something like Fiverr. There are so many services. I think I heard a Scribendi might be one of them. Maybe they're an editing service. I'm throwing out a lot of names and things like that. I just do your due diligence and you'll be able to find the best service for transcriptions. I found that Rev was really good, but they tend to cost a pretty good penny. So just be really careful. Descript might be another one as well. We'll do transcriptions for you. Again, you're going to have to pay for some of these things. There are cheap poor man methods of kind of doing it. If you wanted to, you could always just upload your audio as a video to YouTube, have it auto transcribe that for you, grab the transcription, bring it down. All you have to do is go through and add all the punctuation. But that's a lot of work, man. Like, I would just much rather just hire a professional just to get it done for me. And this can be costly, folks, when you're doing transcriptions. And a lot of instances, transcriptions, when you're going a little bit deeper. So if you've got a 30 to 50,000 word manuscript, a lot of companies are going to probably take about 3 to 5 days to get it all processed and done. And not to mention, when you get it back, there's going to be a ton of editing you're going to need to do, because there's going to be some filler words. There's going to be some stuff it's redundant. There's going to be some just fluff that you would normally, it's okay when you're verbally sharing with somebody, but when you go to reading it, it reads kind of, clunky. And again, going to point out, ProsWrite, they're paying me to say this. They haven't paid me at all. Go check out ProsWrite. That would be a way to kind of do things where you're transcribing it and AI is going in and fixing it for you. Number 4. All right, so we've picked the methodology that we're going to do for creating the book. Now we have to carve out the time. Yeah, believe it or not, you're going to need to prepare for this a lot in advance. First of all, prepare with plenty of rest. You can't go into this with like 2 hours of sleep per night over the last 2 weeks or something like that and expect to actually get a good output. You're going to need to be fully rested and ready to rock and roll. Get any snacks and meals prepared ahead of time. I know it seems kind of silly and you're probably like, Dale, but it only takes me 5 minutes to make my morning oatmeal. That's great. Get it ready in advance. All you got to do is pick it up and just chow down. Get those snacks and meals prepared and get the snacks nearby. So that way, all you got to do is briefly pause. The longest pauses you're going to take is probably going to be some bathroom breaks and every now and then when you're getting up to stretch your legs. Inform your household your plans. Now, if you happen to be single and you only have pets, or you don't even have pets, maybe you can tell your pets, but you're going to tell everybody in the household what you plan on doing. And it's important that you communicate the level of importance of you not being distracted whatsoever, that you not be interrupted unless the place is on fire. Like, tell them to leave you alone. Same thing's going to work with your phone. Shut that thing off. Turn it off. And since you did your preparation in advance, you should be able to just shut off the internet. Cut off the internet so you're not popping onto social media and tweeting to people, oh, I got 10,000 words. Good for you. Once you finish the book, you don't need to be over on X tweeting about how, I've got 10,000 words. Great. Finish the work. Get it done. All right. So shut off the internet if you can help it. You've already got the notes ready to go. So all you have to do is just hit it. And the next thing's going to be number 5, do the work. I know, rather simple for me to say and probably harder for you to do, but you just got to sit down and commit yourself to it. So if you say, okay, 11 a.m., that's when I hit it. And then my deadline's going to be 11 a.m. the very next day. Now, do I suggest that you write for 24 hours straight and go without any sleep? No, I'm not telling you that whatsoever. In fact, when I've written my book in 24 hours before, I would typically get myself a smaller night of sleep. Usually 4, maybe 6 hours. Now, if I'm super really, really intense, I'll go all the way through, but that's me personally, and I would not recommend that. Also, break up your workflow with the Pomodoro method, which is essentially you're doing 25 minutes of uninterrupted work, followed by 5 minutes of rest, and you do 4 rounds of that before you get a 15-minute break. And you can just keep cycling through that. Now, what I've typically done is I'll do 2 of the Pomodoros, which would be 2 hours each, 4 hours in total. And then instead of taking the 15 minutes, I'd probably get up and take about a half hour. I typically do things like meditate, walk a little bit, get up, stretch, talk with my wife, pet the cats, things like that. It's totally up to you. Just take that time away from your dashboard. And I know even if you're feeling like, oh, I'm on a roll right now, I can't stop, Dale, it's probably a good idea to just pump the brakes and take those breaks when you can. Oh my gosh, it's almost like a play on words. I promise you that wasn't a dad joke here, folks. And one thing that I like to do is I meditate once to twice per day. Now that's normal for me on any other given day, but I would recommend meditation as something that you can do to help break up some of the monotony of being in front of a keyboard. Now, meditation doesn't include subscribing to any religious beliefs, although if you want to, that's totally up to you. I don't myself personally. But for meditation, I tell people it's like fitness for the mind. It's a great way to exercise your mental capacity and help keep you centered on a regular basis. Now, if you want to learn more about meditation, you're one Google search away from doing that. Or just hit me up over on Discord and I'll be able to tell you a little bit of how I do my meditation, how I prefer it. I don't sit in the lotus pose, by the way, folks, and I don't chant or do any type of affirmations. I do what's called get between the gap, getting in the gap. That's literally, you can always look that up. I can't remember what the actual name of that was. But either way, meditation, game changer. And especially if you find that you're getting overwhelmed while you're writing your book and you're going, oh gosh, I can't make the deadline, I'm so afraid of this, it'll help center you real quick like. Now, what about publishing the book in that same 24 hours? Can you do that? I wouldn't recommend it. I know. Some people are probably like, clickbait. Like Dale, he brought us in. He says, write and publish a book in 24 hours. Here's how. I totally get it. But I want to grab your attention because a lot of people think that just because you wrote a book in 24 hours that you can go ahead and publish that. No, don't do that. You only have a first draft. Never publish a first draft, ever. I don't care how good you are. Even Stephen King himself does not write a first draft and publish it straight onto the market. Sorry, it's just reality. The most wildly successful author on the market today is not doing something like that. And I wouldn't even recommend it, even if you're using artificial intelligence to write the content for you. Far from perfect these days, and still requires a discerning eye and a little bit of, a human touch to make it to where it's more readable for other humans, if you will. Now, assuming that you're like, okay, what if I can get it edited in that 24 hours as well? Okay, we'll just pretend you're just going to go without sleep, which I don't recommend. Again, assuming you get a human editor, it'll take them some time to read and provide notes. Then they're going to send it back to you, and you have to make corrections, and you got to volley it back to them. I don't know of anybody that has ever been able to write a first draft, get one round of edits, and have a perfectly good manuscript. A lot of times, I'll tell you, I get at least 3 to as much as 6 edits before that thing is showroom ready. And I'm hard-pressed to seeing most people out there today being able to do that within one edit. So just kind of think about that. And then you have to account for things like formatting the manuscript. You got to get the cover design done. You got to get the metadata, keywords and categories, all that type of jazz, making your book description, that stuff. But could you get these done ahead? Sure. The one limitation that you're going to run into is when you're creating a cover design or even the interior. You're going to need the interior, first of all. And once you get the interior, you're going to need to know the page count when it's formatted for the book cover design to be done properly. So there's so many complexities about that you need to kind of think about. And most self-publishing companies can take upwards of a day or longer to process and publish book files. KDP, usually ebooks can take within half a day to a day for them to process that. But sometimes print books take anywhere from a day to 3 days or longer. And that's just KDP. You go over to other platforms like Draft Digital, Publish Drive, Ingram Spark. They're going to take anywhere from a couple of days to a week or 2 weeks at a time. It just varies from one platform to the next. Now, generally, it takes me about 2 hours to publish the ebook, paperback, and hardcover editions of my books across every self-publishing platform. And I got experience in this field, so that means I'll go faster than most authors out there. So if you're sitting there thinking to yourself, okay, what if I get all the editing done and it's ready to rock and roll? Then you need to think about how long it's going to take for you to publish, because that's going to possibly be another 2 hours from the 24 hours that you're trying to accomplish it in. I'd say don't put that pressure on yourself. Give yourself a little bit more runway when it comes to actually publishing the book. For right now, think about writing the first draft within your 24 hours. That is the thing that a lot of authors get hung up on. They're so busy like trying to think about this idea and, oh, it's so perfect, I'm going to go ahead and make it done this, we're going to do it this way, and it just becomes jumble, and then they just never do it. The whole idea of writing a nonfiction book in 24 hours is massive freaking action, getting it done. So that way you can focus on the other things like, refining that manuscript, getting it ready, doing a lot of pre-launch stuff, getting marketing stuff ready to go. There's so much stuff that you got to sweat. I don't know that I'll ever put out a book that says how to publish in 24 hours of writing your book. It's probably just not very, very possible. It's not very feasible. Is it impossible? No, but I'm telling you that your chances are pretty slim in getting something that is passable onto the marketplace within 24 hours. Now, my recommendation, finish your first draft, then take your time editing and handling all the stuff that comes after fully polishing your manuscript. Hey, as we start to wrap up today's podcast, I want to say to you one more time, get one of my preferred book marketing services in Book Award Pro when you visit my affiliate link at dalelinks.com/bookawardpro. For the record, I have about 11 books in the free plan and 1 book in the essentials plan with the monthly automated entries on that specific essentials plan book. The reason why I put my book in there is I don't go for the reviews. I typically go for the awards because I have other ways of getting my reviews. So if you wanted to get reviews, entered on your behalf or targeted for you, you'd want to go on the Pro plan. But I go to the Essentials plan because it's got more than what I need to get. Again, if you haven't visited Book Award Pro in a while and you did before and you were kind of kicking tires and saying it might be too expensive and things like that, you may want to go and revisit it because they just restructured everything. And now I'm not paying near as much as what I used to per month in order to get some of my books targeted. So again, that's dalelinks.com/Book Award Pro. Big shout out and thanks to Hannah Jacobson over at Book Award Pro. She's always been so super supportive, as well as her husband, Jay Jacobson. Big shout out to Jay. Good guy. Now, can you write and publish a book in 24 hours? Yes and no. There are many variables to consider that we went over. For instance, let me just share with you. I was not 1,000% ready to write my book in 24 hours for wide publishing for authors. That's going to be coming out in January. The reason is I didn't have a resources list. I didn't have all the links put together. So what ended up happening is that slowed me down considerably. I found out the hard way over the last couple of weeks of me rewriting this manuscript and making it really polished and bringing in some of those sources and things like that. A lot of the time consisted of cross-checking a lot of my things before I wrote, and I should have done those things ahead of time. So again, having that stuff available. Now, if you're not a fast typer or talker or writer, accomplishing this task is a tall ask. But with practice and a few tips to point you in the right direction, you can definitely write a book in one day. It's just going to take some time. Remember, I've been in this business for a decade, so you might be looking at it and going, oh my gosh, just take some of the things that I recommend in my book and as well as this podcast here and implement some of that on a daily basis. And you might find that you're going to write quicker, more efficient, and get it to where you've got that manuscript done as soon as possible. Now, for publishing the same day, not so much. Be my guest. You want to take a stab at it, but I stress caution because it could lead down a dusty road no one wants to travel. Get my award-nominated book, How to Write a Nonfiction Book in 24 Hours, at every major online retailer and library when you visit dalelinks.com/24hoursbook. The link is inside the show notes as per usual. Join me next week when we're going to be talking about the ultimate guide to going wide, how to sell your books beyond Amazon. How funny, that was just talking about wide publishing for authors, which is coming out in January. We're going to be talking a little bit more. It's a little bit of a sneak preview of what you're going to be able to expect in January for wide publishing for authors. Till later, this has been Self-Publishing with Dale, and I appreciate you tuning in.